You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Welcome, everyone, all you piglets out there, mere mortalites, in fact, to another edition of the Mere Mortals Book Reviews. I'm your host here, Kyron, live on the 26th of March, 2025 at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Wednesday. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where I rant and rave about the current modern politics. Damn you politicians. Okay, no, I'm not going to be doing that today. Although our author actually, funnily enough, did a little bit of that in the book that we have today, The Tao of Pooh and the Day of Piglet by Benjamin Hoff. Now, this book was originally published in 1982, that being the Tao of Pooh, the Tao. I'll pronounce it correctly, the Tao. And the second section of this book, The Day of Piglet, was actually published in 1992 with this combined version that I have in front of myself here, published in 1994. So with the two of these together, it's about 424 pages. It took me about 5 hours reading. It's not super, super dense because you do also have these like little illustrations of Piglet and Pooh and all the woods that they were in and things like this. So it's not a long book. You can get through it pretty quickly. And it is a rather light read as well. It's not dense in terms of the information provided because it's interpreting Taoism through the lens of A. Milne's, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Winnie the Pooh characters. So core concepts such as what is the Way, Wu Wei, Taoism in general, are interpreted through these characters, and we see how they are enacting some of the principles, particularly Pooh and Piglet, hence why they are in the titles. So we see also how it's presented with the author himself interacting with the characters as if they were in real life as well, before also providing quotes from particularly the Winnie the Pooh stories, as well as from other Taoism texts, as well as other just random people in everyday life who have lived, reconstructing things and I suppose just presenting, Taoism in general. What is it? Which I guess gets us on to our main theme for today. What philosophy can be learned from Winnie the Pooh? What Taoism practices are demonstrated in particular? So I've got to be upfront in that this section is not going to be super objective. And part of the reason for this is because of the way it's structured, which is a little bit chaotic, to be honest. So my observations are going to kind of reflect that of the internal structure, because it alternates between, on one page, the author talking to Winnie the Pooh and the characters, and then providing a snippet from one of their stories, interpreting that, and then jumping over to a quote from a Taoism master, and then jumping back to him explaining what he thinks has happened. Quotes from Henry David Thoreau, for example, in Walden is pretty often, as well as in the Piglet section, offering a lot of modern cultural observations and kind of talking, as I mentioned, about like politics of all things, which is just like, okay, well, yeah, interesting. So first of all, Taoism, what is it? And he presents, I guess, the basic precepts of Taoism through how Pooh behaves. So what you'll see is how Pooh doesn't get flustered over, hypothetical heffalumps that they think might exist, even if they fall into a heffalump hole, and Piglet's getting super worried. When bad things happen, he usually problem solves without worrying about the problem. It's very kind of action-orientated type of mindset, such as when one of the characters, I think it was Roo maybe, was floating down the stream and he used a bamboo pole to help save him and make a bridge. He doesn't let Piglet's concerns, I guess, sway his inner tranquility, which he has. He's very much part of him. He knows who he is. He's a Pooh Bear, and he's not shameful about that, or his, insatiable desire for honey, for example. Yet he's also not a monk sheltering himself from the world and, trying to find this inner tranquility. He just is I guess the to put it in a simple sentence. He just is, and he has this childlike curiosity, which is part of what Taoism is talking about a lot, which is finding this like inner childlike joy of the world. And sure, you can experience emotions such as sadness, such as disappointment, anger, all of these things. But it's not like when you experience those, you experience them, but you don't cling to them. You don't hang on to them. You don't let them affect the inner workings of your mind and ruminate on them, I suppose is probably the best way of saying that. So that's kind of Taoism encapsulated in the character of Pooh and some of the ways that he behaves. Piglet's section is a lot longer and more about what not to do, I would say. So the main simple idea is of turning your weakness into strength via changing your mindset. So we see with Piglet, he is very anxious and he's continually putting himself down, saying how he's just a small animal in a big, big world. We see how he behaves with the heffalump situation where he's super nervous and scared of this, hypothetical thing, which they'd kind of just created in their mind. Reinterpreting the situation is likely a better way of trying to solve your problems rather than eliminating whatever it is that you're feeling. So we see this in some examples where a situation will happen, in particular when they're in Owl's house and it gets knocked over and they're all kind of worrying, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out? Except for Pooh, because Pooh's just like, being Pooh, just casually, whatever, I'm here. Then he kind of gets some encouragement and it's like, look, Piglet, you're scared, but you can use your smallness to your advantage and you can get out of the letterbox. And so they manage to get him out and, with the help of Pooh and Owl. And then he becomes the hero because he tells everyone else and then they free them and, la-di-da, awesome. So we kind of see, I guess, Te or Day means virtue in action is what the interpretation of that into English would be. And what we see with Piglet is he manages to transform himself during the books and during the stories from this anxious character into one who is certainly, maybe not permanently, more courageous and accepting of himself and his smallness, but certainly has changed his outlook where his nature, he doesn't worry about it as much and is even thankful at times of who he is. So this is kind of the Tao and the Day that we see. Now there's many kind of like little sub-chapters within this book of talking about, Coddleston Pie, Busy Baxen, that sort of bear, all of these sorts of things, which were just trying to examples, I guess, of trying to explain the Taoism, but that's probably about as far as it really went. It doesn't get into very, very deep concepts here. It's pretty light. So throughout the book, the author praises the philosophy of the East and is really denouncing the philosophy of the West, I guess, or certainly the way that Westerners live. And we'll get onto him and who he was shortly. What I personally like about Eastern philosophy is what he kind of gets at the heart here of which is of suffering, and in particular the suffering that we cause ourselves. I think there's a lot of suffering in life that is unavoidable. We're all going to get sick, experience pain of various sorts throughout our lives, and if it's not us, then people that we love. And you can get that kind of secondhand suffering of grief, and when someone passes away who's close to you, things like this. But there's a lot of suffering that we cause, which is really not necessary, and is caused by ourselves as well, of ruminating things, of worrying about the promotion, of are you attractive or not, and which is not linked to direct like pain sensations in the body, for example, and things like this. So what I personally like about Taoism and Eastern philosophies in general is they have a lot of unique insights on consciousness, of why we do this to ourselves, some potential remedies of how we can alter our ways of thinking to prevent this, to stop the unnecessary suffering. They, I guess, would probably claim that all suffering can be ameliorated, can be dispensed with in certain respects, and this is that concept of nirvana. That's not really talked about in the book, nor is the Buddha because, this is talking, the people who are mentioned are more like Chuang-Tzu, Lao Tzu, and I think his name's the Golden Emperor. I've forgotten the other famous Taoist author. So the Western version is kind of more along the lines of self-development or of continual progress of goal setting and things like this, which, whilst can affect your mood and can certainly bore you up, a lot of the time I feel like it's, and I've used this analogy in the past, you might have some mold on the wall and you can paint over it and make it look nice, but the mold will eventually come back. Taoism, I don't think, is as much of if I had to describe that, Taoism also is not a permanent fix, but it's a more lighthearted way of doing it, where instead of, trying to cover up or hide the mold or can change its nature, it's like, oh, okay, the mold is part of the house, and we'll perhaps change the other portions of the wall to look green so that it is blending in, something like that. Not the perfect analogy, because mold can also kill you, and so maybe you want to do something about it. But that's I guess one aspect of Eastern philosophy which perhaps isn't helpful. And there are certainly aspects in here which I think are interesting for the way that they're not better than Western philosophy. I've noticed a lot of judgment at times in this book in particular. He's judging of certain people, particularly Westerners who are, doing their thing, goal setting, trying to progress forward in life and self-development and things like that. And he particularly makes fun of people like the lonely nomad cowboy, the restless pioneer, or the overzealous hardworking Puritan. And the thing that I find interesting about that is, what if that is those people's nature? What if that they've found the optimal path of working really hard, and that is what they're meant to be doing in life? That is, they are experiencing less suffering in life because of the way they've chosen to live. And I think there is a lot of judgment in certain types of, oh, this person's behaving like this. And whilst it might not be suited for 95% of people, I think it could work for 5% of people. And there is a very hard-nosed stance about Western culture in many ways, without appreciating some of the benefits that it has. So, I think that's one of the ways where it's like, describing those people as busy Baxons, and this is a character where it's, from a joke, because Peter, I've forgotten the boy's name, the young Jackson Robinson. I've forgotten his name. Jesus, I've read it like 50 times and and it's just gone from me. Anyway, he his spelling is rather poor, and he said he was busy and he's gonna be back soon, but he misspelt it, and so it said Busy Baxon, and everyone's like, who's this Busy Baxon character? And they attach things to him, saying like, oh, he's like this crazy guy who's doing all of these things, whatnot. So there are relatively little actual concepts within this book of the Tao, of Day, and of Wu Wei. I actually don't like Wu Wei. This is another kind of, sour point for me on this, which is, in the example he gives of the book is Piglet and Pooh, and they're going to Eeyore's to give him some birthday presents because it's his birthday. And, Eeyore's Eeyore, he's always mopey and sad and talking bad about himself and of other people as well. He's always kind of, trying to be the damp rag. Not trying to be, he is the damp rag, the wet towel in any conversation. And they go to him and they're like, we'll do something nice, we'll bring him some birthday presents. And then they don't. Pooh eats all of the honey that he brought, and Piglet like kind of forgets, or he was going to get some flowers, but he doesn't really do it well. And so they both get there and they're like, ah, shit. Well, not really. The Piglet's like, ah, shit, we should have done better. And Pooh's just like, ah, whatever, it is what it is. This is what will be. And in this case is saying like, this is Wu Wei. Pooh is in Wu Wei. He's just living in the moment. Everything's awesome. And sure, it works out for them because Eeyore loves the presents, because he, goes and uses the empty honey bowl to put the flowers in and take them out and all sorts of things like this. And I'm just going like, I feel this is unrealistic. I feel the more likely situation in this would be, someone's disappointed in that you've shown little effort in celebrating their birthday, and you actually cause them concern, harm for your selfishness, for your lack of forethought. And you want to know why I say this? Because I did this to my dad accidentally the other day for his birthday, and it certainly was on my part. It was like, oh, you know what? That was my fault. I was selfish in what I wanted to do on that day, and through a miscommunication as well, it ended up me hurting his feelings a little bit. And this is, I feel, way more realistic. So I could have been all Wu Wei about it and just been like, oh, it was what it was. It happened how it happened. But then I don't jive with that concept, because I think the more likely thing is, okay, no, you actually were just being selfish. So where does the concept of Pooh's kind of living in the moment, lack of forethought, carelessness, where it's the boundary point of where that's actually not a good thing, and he's hurting relationships, making other people feel bad? Is that Taoism? Is that the Wu Wei? Is that the way? I wouldn't be particularly happy if that was how it was. And this is the hard bit of a lot of religions, is they say a lot of like nice things, but really knowing how to interpret it, apply it to any given situation is pretty damn hard, to be honest. So his lackadaisical sloppiness doesn't seem like the balanced middle path, versus the she'll be right mentality of or over worrying mentality of we got to do everything perfect. So yeah, and unfortunately, I guess just to end this off, there is a rather strong bent against science, which leaves the door open for more standard religious claims, which are a bit wacky, a little bit out there. In this one, for example, you will find claims of telepathy. You'll find claims that we were all vegetarian back in the past, and we lived in a utopia before we developed an ego. I'd never heard of this in Taoism before. I'm not sure if this is just the author's addition to that. The getting even crazier, we had longer lifespans in the past, such as the documented 1777 to 1933 Chinese 256-year-old Li Chungyun, with claims that this is doable for all of us, and if we just lived more in the Tao and in the Way. I very much doubt that, and the documents of this gentleman, I looked a bit into it, and it's like, I don't think that's particularly hard evidence that this guy actually lived that long, and everything that we know about science and the way the body works and documented history suggests that it's rather unlikely that this man lived multiple hundreds of years. So there's just some other unverifiable vagaries as well of earth angels, nature spirits, perfected spirits, the age of perfect virtue. There's a whole lot in there where it's like, yeah, okay, all right, Taoism's nice at all. I like what its insights on the nature of suffering, how one might be able to think their way out of it, or do things in their life to help reduce that mental suffering that we cause ourselves. But when it comes to claims on the universe and how things actually work, I'll stick to Western science for that one. Thank you very much. So let's jump on to the author himself. Benjamin Hoff, American, born in 1946. Seemed like a rather eccentric gentleman who had many hobbies related to artistry, of music, of gardening, architecture, Tai Chi, and obviously he was interested in the Taoist religion. He wrote 5 books in the 1980s, or 1980 and 1990 period, 2 of them being very popular, that being the Tao of Pooh in particular, and the Day of Piglet, which was a kind of follow-up later on, which I believe had some success, probably not as much as the Tao of Pooh. Unfortunately, Benjamin, he doesn't really appear to embody the calm nature of Taoism that you would expect from a Taoist master. If you feel like diving into some rather whiny stuff, check out his blog. It's got a rather victim mentality of how the book publishing industry is awful. How who was the authors of this? I believe this was this one's Egmont, but whoever he originally published with, he had a falling out with them. Refuses to turn any of his works into ebooks. Reading his blog was rather eye-opening, going like, damn, this dude does not have much Taoism in the way that he communicates with other people, and the way that he presents himself to the world. Maybe he spent a bit too much time with Eeyores in his life. I'm not really sure. And this is kind of what I left out about the book, which is the random stuff not related to Taoism, and there's a whole bunch of it. The first book, the Tao of Pooh, is pretty good. That sticks to what I mainly talked about, the interpreting Taoism through the Pooh characters. Okay, that's cool. But then in the Day of Piglet, like, it started to randomly just chuck in some stuff. So, for example, he first talked about the modern negative news media, which I wasn't really expecting. Then comparing Eeyore Amazons to woke feminists, and then Tigers and modern workaholic consumerism America. Okay, sure, it's a little bit strange, but I guess it's still related to the Pooh characters. It's not really related to Taoism, but sure, okay. There's, let him go whatever he wants, do whatever he wants. It's his book. And then he just goes off the deep end with some really unhinged stuff. So he was super worried about nuclear power and radiation in those days. And, this was in the time of Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and stuff. So you're like, okay, I can understand why someone might have concerns about this. And then he talks about how we've, perverted nature and with the big invention of microwaves. He was worried about microwaves being in every house and how this would be a terrible thing. He started complaining about his local politician in, I don't even think it was his state, his county or something like this. Nightmare clown leaders of the Western Industrial Society killing Mother Earth. He compared the death of dinosaurs and how these big lumbering dinosaurs lost out to birds, which I'm not sure is scientifically correct in the way of, I thought it was more like the small reptiles, which were, and maybe marsupials, which survived. But anyway, and comparing that to how big companies and these monolithic companies are getting outsmarted by these small, nimble companies, which is certainly not true today. The big companies are even bigger than bigger. He hinted of a great storm coming to destroy us all. I've got a little section for you here. Page 387 at the bottom, and you tell me if you feel like this sort of stuff should be in a book about the Winnie the Pooh characters and about Taoism. So, at present, billions of American tax dollars are being spent each year on preparations for war, weapons of war, industries of war, running the nation into unpayable debt, while across the country, untaxed gang lords cruise about in limousines, drug pushers and psychopaths prey on neglected children, homeless grandmothers push their worldly possessions before them through the streets in shopping carts, and citizens of all ages contract pistol fever, shooting themselves and each other with handguns at the rate of 64 deaths per day, killing more Americans in 2.5 years than did the 16-year Vietnam War, and wounding approximately 100,000 others yearly. And then it goes on to talk about the Soviet Union, of trillions of dollars in the armed forces, toxic waste, of what else we got here? Thousands of animals and birds dying of drinking water, mortar shells, of armored bulldozers, and then he goes through all of this, right? And then just suddenly, when the empire follows the way, wrote Lao Tzu, horses haul wagons of fertilizer through the fields. When the empire loses the way, horses haul war chariots and beyond the city walls. And then he's just got like a random poem. It's like, what the hell? What the hell's going on here? I had no idea what was really going on in these last sections. What baffles me most of all of this is just, I guess, his inability to see his own mental state and recognize, like, this isn't Tao. I'm not following the way right now. Like, I'm not tranquil. I'm not, experiencing emotions and letting them flow through me, and it's just like an unhinged rant. It's just baffling. It truly was baffling of seeing this in a book about Taoism and Winnie the Pooh. So let's jump onto the summary here. I honestly can't say much good about this. It felt like I read kind of, putting apart the unhinged parts, it felt like I read about 1/3 of the Winnie the Pooh stories, but without the full context of the story, of really getting into it, which I would have enjoyed more. And also the Taoism parts, I probably would have fleshed out a bit more. It was interesting seeing him interpret them through these characters, so that wasn't particularly bad. And maybe if the book was 400 pages of a mixture of those, it would have been good. But the Taoist commentary of the Pooh section was kind of, perhaps it was revelatory back in the 80s, when Taoism was unheard of in the West, when we didn't have access to all of the resources that we do, thanks to modern science, via the internet. And so I can see okay, yeah, that section was pretty good. If the whole book was that, it might have been a 5 out of 10. But the Piglet section of the angry, condescending, fear-mongering rant against random things, just, I don't know, maybe people enjoyed that, but I certainly didn't. So overall, I'm going to have to give the Tao of Pooh and the Day of Piglet 2.5 out of 10. I probably wouldn't recommend this. I can't say that this is a great book to read. What's some similar books recommendations? I didn't mind Chuang Tzu, reading his works. I've also Lao Tzu on this channel. I've done both of those before. If you actually want a book similar to this, using philosophy with modern characters, there is a book called Batman and Philosophy. I read that many, many years ago. Probably, how old was I? I might have been 18, 19 or something like that. And that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. And that was, I believe, more about Western philosophy. So I would probably recommend a book like that rather than this one. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. This is a Value for Value podcast. This is going to be available anytime, anywhere for anyone. And I want to keep it that way. So there's no sponsorships on this channel. There's no, people paying me to read certain types of books, promote their books, anything like that. This is just what I come across in my everyday life. This one actually was recommended to me by my ex-girlfriend, Andrea. So thank you very much, Andrea, for mentioning that. I love getting recommendations. Even though I didn't particularly enjoy the book, it was still fun kind of reading it. And the ranting section was that's a unique thing. I haven't come across many books like that before. So it was certainly a different type of book. With all of that being said, I and my co-host Juan are providing all of this value up front, and we just ask that you return it in some shape or form. Many different ways of doing this: time, talent, and treasure. Time, taking the time to click on the like button to share this with someone. Word of mouth is super important to podcasts like this, and also of getting the word out there. I guess of sharing it with a friend who would enjoy it. Talent, give me some book recommendations. What do you think I will like? What do you think I'm missing? If there's anything I said wrong in this book or your interpretations, comments of it, I would love to hear that. Comment down below or reach out to us via any of the social media links. And then finally, treasure. We have a PayPal link down below. And if you go to meremortalspodcast.com/support, you can help support us financially as well. So that is it. Thank you very much for joining in. I am live, as I mentioned, 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on a Wednesday. What is coming up in the future? So I will be doing probably about another 6 book reviews of this until I start traveling. When I start traveling, I am not confident. Well, I know for certain I'm not going to be able to do it at a regular time on a regular day. And I'm also unconfident of how many book reviews I can actually do whilst traveling, because it's going to be a bit different compared to now rather than when I was in Brazil. So look forward to another five-ish book reviews from me in the regular slot. What am I reading? I'm reading Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach at the moment. I've got a Peter Pan book, I think, on the way. and I'm not too sure actually. So yeah, probably some smaller books in this period because it's going to start getting really busy for me. So that's it. Thank you very much for everyone for tuning in, for joining in. Hope you're having a fantastic Tao day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Karen out. Bye.